welcome to our podcast, Let's Explore Tokyo. My name's James.
My name's Lee.
This is a podcast aimed at people who are interested in coming to Tokyo, whether that's to live or to work or just to visit. Over the life of this podcast, we're hoping to do various things, such as episodes like this one where we're going to look at a certain topic about life in Tokyo and Japan generally. And we're going to have other episodes where we go to parts of Tokyo and we investigate, we learn about the area, learn about the history and the culture, whether that's pop culture or history.
Yeah, and hopefully share some of the things that we learn along the way that we think might be interesting to anyone who wants to come to Japan. And let's face it, if you're coming to Japan, you're probably going to come to Tokyo first. We may be somewhat qualified to make a podcast like this because both of us have lived in Japan and, well, in this case, Tokyo for over a decade, each of us. I've lived in Japan for coming on 16 years this year.
You're originally in Nagano.
I was. I'm from New Zealand originally, and my first job in Japan was in Nagano Prefecture, which, if anybody remembers, or this makes me sound really old now, old enough to remember the Nagano Olympics in 1998, the Winter Olympics that is, it's of course where the Winter Olympics were held. That was, for me and like a lot of people around the world, maybe the first time they'd ever heard of Nagano, really. And
probably, yeah.
And I remember a job opportunity came up from a New Zealand man and his Japanese wife who were running a small English teaching school in a small city in Nagano Prefecture. And I thought, I've heard of Nagano and I'd like to go to Japan, so I'll give these guys a call. And yeah, long story short, I got the job there. I lived in Nagano Prefecture for about 4 years. It was very useful for learning Japanese. And then I moved to Tokyo, where I met James actually through a mutual friend.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Glasgow in Scotland. And years in Japan have softened the accent somewhat. When I first came to Japan, I came here as an English teacher. Having an accent full of character can be challenging when you're trying to teach English.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
For example, when I say, what I would now say obviously is brown, the colour brown.
Brown.
Yeah, but back home, I'd say brown. And then I would say it to a room full of kids and they would say brown. I was like, wow, that's I'm doing you a disservice if I teach you to say that, because then you're not really learning useful English. Yeah. You first came to Japan 2003. 2003. I first came in 2002, but I actually left and then came back. I left and went.
You came on the JET program originally.
Yeah, I originally came in the JET program. I was in,
which I know a lot of people who want to come to Japan, that's a popular in.
Yeah, I mean, the JET program's a good way to do
itself,
it.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, where you get assigned is very random. But again, a little bit like your Nagano experience, if you actually want to come and see Japan and learn Japanese, you want to be in the countryside. Difficult to do it, because in Tokyo it's very easy to speak English realistically. So I first was in a little town called Tawaramachi, which is in Nara-ken, part of Kinkiku.
Oh yeah, Kinki region.
Kinki, Kinkiku. And yeah, it was a good experience. So actually, I went home twice because I finished my JET program 1 year, went back home. Oh yeah, that's right. I had 2 gaps, 2002 to 2003 here, back home for about a year, came back in end of 2004, then 2013 went to Singapore, then lived in Singapore for a few years, Korea for a year, then came back to Japan end of 2017, middle of 2017.
Many people who come to Japan and stay longer than, say, 2 or 3 years, if you stay more than that, there's quite a high chance you may end up getting married, like I did. Yeah, my wife's Japanese, and so now I'm very much sort of, I won't say permanently rooted here, but I've got very strong roots here in Japan now because of that. So
we will, on occasion, obviously complain about something in Japan because we live here, and you complain about the place that you live.
Nowhere's perfect.
Yeah, but it very much comes from a place of love. Like we both really like Japan. So always, if we're making a complaint, we're not in any way trying to be negative about Japan. We're just being, trying to be honestly reflective of the place that we live, but it is the place that we call home.
We live here, we've got family here, and we want to see, friends and family do well. So that's only natural, isn't it? So if we do, I have some gripes here and there. We're not bashing Japan as a country or Japanese culture or people as a whole. We want to see that any of those problems get straightened out. So so just in advance, but there's a lot of good things to talk about Japan anyway. So
way more good things than bad things.
Japan's one of those places, you and I have talked about this quite a lot. It's one of those countries that has quite a reputation in that many people around the world seem to have some kind of opinion on Japan or Japanese culture or idea.
And certainly some interest, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite an intriguing country, I think, for most of the world. Which ties into the theme of this first episode, 5 preconceptions about Japan.
In no particular order, that is.
There's 5 commonly held preconceptions that we're going to explore.
Yeah. Some of them we may have had ourselves before we came here, and some of them are just ones that we've heard either through the internet, media, and just through our own travels.
Number 1, everything is modern.
Ah, yes. This is quite a common one.
I very much held this. I don't know.
I did too.
I don't know what I thought, but I thought when I was a young man in Glasgow getting ready to get on that plane and come over to the JET program, I'd almost to the extent that if I'd seen a flying car in Tokyo, I would have been like, oh, you know what? I kind of thought they might have had those. Like I had such an image that Tokyo was probably like 80% robotic almost in my mind.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And is everything modern in Tokyo, Lee?
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
A lot of it isn't. And a lot of it's just kind of, it's fairly ordinary, I suppose.
Certain things you'll see every day are very modern, but they live alongside other things which are way more antiquated than what we would be used to in the UK or New Zealand or the States, for example. Such as, we remember when your ATM, your cash machine, would close at night.
Yeah, around about 7 p.m.
Close at the weekend as well.
Yeah, and national holidays.
Yeah, so your ATM has a holiday. Your ATM needs a rest.
Yeah.
And
it still does happen.
Yeah,
some banks.
Yeah.
Oh, that was annoying.
So that was quite surprising. And Japanese online banking, even in Japanese, is only a fairly recent thing.
Yeah.
And in English, really only like the last couple of years. It's only Shinsei, I think, that gives it.
Yeah, what are some other things that could be considered, I don't know, maybe slightly old-fashioned or antiquated? So there's the big paper trail in business and bureaucracy everywhere.
Yeah. Hankos are still fairly...
Hanko. What is a hanko?
So hanko is a wooden seal. Not like the animal, but a wooden seal such as you would put a seal on a letter or a document.
Yeah, a stamp.
And I love hankos. They're great.
Yeah.
But they are antiquated. I mean, it's the same system that's been used since, I guess, the Edo period, way beyond the Edo period.
And hundreds of years.
So a Japanese person, if they were opening a bank account, wouldn't sign anything. They would stamp it with their hanko, with your seal.
And that seal has to be registered at your local
ward office.
Your
kyakusho or your shiakusho.
City office, yeah.
The so that's interesting as well.
Yeah.
I don't have a hanko, do you?
I've got one, but it's not officially...
Is it Lee?
It is. It just says Lee in katakana. One of the big stumbling blocks you may have if you're coming to Japan if you're going to be working here anyway, is getting a hanko. And it's a bit of a process. And you've got to get that hanko registered at the local office.
Yeah.
If you lose that hanko, you have to report it to the police.
Yep.
And report it as lost to the city office. It's a big, again, the whole paper trail starts again.
Yeah.
I mean, there are reasons why that system continues, because it's very, very hard to forge a hanko.
Yeah, I mean, like
very difficult.
A paper document with an intricate seal on it is, yeah.
So there are reasons.
The other thing that's similarly related in terms of sort of paper trail and admin is Japan is still really, maybe the last couple of years, sorry to be fair, the last couple of years changing a little bit. But even up until like 2015, Japan was a cash society, hard cash in your pocket. You had notes and coins in your pocket because otherwise there are many places where you would not have been able to pay for simple sundries. Yeah.
It's still got ways to go.
I would say still in like the countryside, what they call it, inaka.
Oh god.
A tip for anyone, and I'm sure you'd see this in so many blogs as well and boards, is if you're outside of Tokyo and you're not going to like a hotel that you've already checked, or a hotel that's part of an international chain, then your credit card might not be useful for anything.
Yep.
And any local stores in that area will just be like, oh, we do not accept credit cards.
Yeah, that's probably a very good piece of advice.
Hard
Come
cash.
to Japan. Do not rely on a credit card solely. Yeah, there is a high chance, even though your credit card, it may say Visa on it or MasterCard, it's complicated. Some Japanese banks, even though they are Visa or they are MasterCard, they won't, how do you say it? They have their own, like Visa has its own office here, which is separate from Visa International. And there's a lot of examples of that around Japan. You think, oh, Citibank, great, I got a Citibank. Yeah, no, Citibank Japan doesn't work.
Citibank Japan is a franchise.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, they've franchised the name, but actually Citibank Japan is a Japanese organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Cash, bring cash.
Yeah. If you're in Tokyo, it should be fine nowadays. Yeah, but it's just any day
especially
trip.
in chain stores. Yeah, any of the large convenience store chains like 7-Eleven, Lawson, Family Mart. Yeah, sure, fine. Yeah. But yeah, if you're going somewhere outside of the cities,
just make sure you know what you're doing in your day trip, or bring cash.
Yeah, always have some cash with you. I mean, I still do it now. I'm mostly cashless these days, but I always have 10,000 yen in my wallet. I guess to round off that first point then, like what would be some of the things that would be seen as quite modern here?
Now you've got me.
Yeah.
Because what actually is modern?
You know, I think maybe when we were kids, I don't know about you, but I had this image of Japan being this very clean, technologically advanced place, because you'd always see things, well, not always, but if I did see anything on TV related to Japan, they'd show you the bullet train, the Shinkansen. And you think,
the Shinkansen, cool. I guess it's only one thing, but the Shinkansen is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I'm not into trains, like some people here are really train heads, but it's fast, it's clean, it looks sleek, and it is ridiculously on time.
Years and years ago, there were probably things like the bullet train, like some of the first sort of factory robots, and things like automated delivery services, things like that, which seemed very futuristic. But in this day and age, I don't think it really stands out anymore.
Anything massively modern anymore, really.
No, and the reason why we brought this topic up was because it is one of those things we've both heard so many times from people like at home, from our friends and families back home, people who come here for the first time, on TV, etc. People say, wow, Japan's so technologically advanced. And it's like, I guess it was years and years ago in some fields.
And in some categories, that's it.
And it probably still is in certain fields that we're completely unaware of, like maybe some parts of science and technology are particularly advanced compared to other countries. But in terms of everyday life, nothing really stands out.
No, but it's very easy to live here.
Yep.
The only thing I would say is just the cash thing would be a surprise. And the ATM thing would be a surprise. But they've lessened now in Tokyo, but they've probably not lessened over the other parts of Japan. Like Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, you'd be fine.
We can probably expect that to improve the closer we get to the 2020 Olympics as well.
Yeah.
On to number two.
Number two.
Here's one that I'm sure many people have had this preconception about Japan and Japanese people. I'm sure I did when I was younger, and I'm sure maybe you did as well. Although by the time I came here when I was an adult, I was in my early 20s, I think, when I first came here. This preconception had lessened somewhat because I was more mature. And that is that everyone in Japan is really, really small.
When you're a kid, you're right, as an adult it lessens, but when you're a kid, I believe that your image of a Japanese person would normally have been small man or a small lady in a kimono.
Or at least portrayed as a very small man, usually in thick framed glasses. And that's totally Hollywood's fault.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. If you think of terrible portrayals of Japanese people from the 60s, like Mickey Rooney.
It's Breakfast at Tiffany's, is he Japanese, isn't it? Yeah.
Apparently he's Japanese. Mickey Rooney. That's awful. It's just so bad. But I still hear this from time to time. Not exactly in those words, like, oh, everybody in Japan's really short. I hear people, like I've had workmates come join, my company. I was working with my employer at the time. They said like, oh, well, I seem to really stand out here. I think I'll probably stand out when I go out and say, hold your horses there. Yeah. It's not necessarily the case.
No. So we've got some facts.
Facts, yeah. We bring you the facts here. Prior to this, I looked up average height of males worldwide by nationality. And Japan...
What's your source?
The source is from a site called disabledworld.com.
Oh.
And Japan is, for males, average height of 172 centimeters, which in old measurements is 5'7".
There you go.
It's on the slightly smaller side.
Smaller.
Yeah,
but
it's not
notably
significant.
small. No.
So just to give you some sort of idea of comparison, where I'm from in New Zealand, average height of all males is 177 centimeters or 5'9". UK is broken up into individual countries. UK, England, 175.3. See, UK, Scotland, 175. UK, Wales, 177. So it's around about that, you know.
Fairly similar,
and I think the US, oh, here we go. USA is also 175.9. That's 5'9". So yeah.
You would still tend to find in Japan that the older generation of Japanese people, you will sometimes see people who are very small.
Absolutely.
Like you'll see, oh, that's like an old couple and they're very small. They're both under 5'5".
Yeah.
And sometimes even under 5'3". So you'll see that. But in general, like Japanese kids nowadays and Japanese people of the younger generation, unless, okay, the Netherlands, everyone's tall in the Netherlands. Czech Republic.
Dutch people are massive, yeah.
Other than that, Japan, you wouldn't really notice such a big difference between like going to London or going anywhere else nowadays with the younger generation.
If you're from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, any of those Anglophone countries where the average height seems to be anywhere from 175 to 178 centimeters, that's about 5'9" or 5'10".
Yeah.
And you come here to Japan and you meet someone of the average, a male of the average height, 172 centimeters. That's only a 5 centimeter difference. That's not significant. I'm about 176 centimeters, I think. Yeah, sure. Like maybe the average guy is 172, but that's only like a 4 centimeter difference. And that's 4 centimeters is not something that you notice in height.
Yeah.
Either way, if someone's 4 centimeters taller or shorter than you, it's not significant enough to really pick up on.
Number 3. Everyone is really well behaved.
Ah, yes.
And you know what? There's a lot to this in terms of it's very safe to live here, which is brilliant. I really, on a daily basis, like to remind myself, like, this is a great place to live in terms of it's so safe. Crime rate here is very low. Petty crime rate is just almost
very low.
I don't know anyone that's been mugged.
No, almost. It does happen here, but it's almost unheard of.
It's a big city, right? Big city. Foreigners, I think, we're less likely to get mugged because we're just considered a bit different.
Yeah.
And they may think we're tourists, and Japanese people are super nice to tourists. Especially elderly tourists. You will be treated like a king and queen. Yeah, I mean, the average person in Tokyo, I would imagine that they've never been the victim of any kind of petty crime. It's quite possible for many people. What is a very common Japanese story, and again, you know, with affection we say this, is it's much more likely that a Japanese person you know got absolutely ripped drunk, which is very common in Japan. Very common. And then left their wallet somewhere, and then the police calling them and then going to pick up their wallet with nothing taken out of it a few days later. That happens a lot. Or their phone. Yeah. No one's stolen the phone to try and sell it. They think it's been stolen. They make all the requisite, you know, sort of cancelling of contracts. Then the police call them and they're like, were you in Shimbashi last Friday? No. Oh, maybe I was. Wait a minute. Yeah, you were, because we've got your phone.
Yeah.
Got your phone and the, you know, $300 worth of cash that was sitting under the phone. We've also got that, because of course no one took it. In fact, the most likely crime that would have happened, which is again quite amusingly common in Japan, is the drunken man or drunken lady, but the drunken man more likely in Shimbashi, is sleeping on a bench with his phone sprawled on the floor, and when the police come to wake him up, he shouts at the police for waking him up. Yeah. That's much more common. We even have posters here. Remember the posters reminding you in the train stations not to harangue the staff when you're drunk.
Oh yeah,
because there's a picture of a middle-aged paunch man who's clearly, you know, drunk as a lord, berating staff, because that is a bigger problem than anything else.
Yeah, especially
not that that's actually funny. That is bad. It shouldn't happen. But it's just kind of like, wow, yeah.
There's huge societal pressure to conform in Japan in all aspects of life here. The manners thing and public behavior is a very big one. And I had an interesting discussion, I won't get into too much detail, with a young Japanese guy who was helping me move apartments once, and he spent some time living overseas, and he said Japanese people can, and he's seen it, behave quite differently in public when they're overseas. Now it depends on the situation. This is mostly good, but it can sometimes go a little bit, especially if there's alcohol involved, sometimes in his experience go a little bit off the rails a little bit, because there weren't other Japanese people around to sort of
set the norm.
And be and have that kind of, that sort of all overbearing sort of tut, 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 you don't do that, which is a huge part of life here.
The core truth is that Japanese people are no more or less likely than people from anywhere else in the world to be a lovely, beneficent, pleasant person or an awful, egotistical, selfish monster, as anywhere else in the world can be. But what makes the preconception mostly true is that well-behaved is the right way to put it. Japanese people in general, though, in public situations, will conform happily to a norm, and that norm is to be well-behaved and very polite and full of manners. So it works because it's good. It makes life a lot easier.
It does. It makes, especially in a very, very crowded place like Tokyo, where there has to be very strict rules about manners and behavior and high expectations and things like that, because you're living in such close proximity to just millions of people
and sometimes,
every day.
As I think we'll get on to, sometimes you're right next to them with them squeezing into you.
Yeah, that brings us on to the next point.
Number 4.
Efficient trains.
Well, I guess everything being efficient.
Yeah. This is not just about trains, but we agreed before recording this that we talk about, there's very much this image of all trains in Japan being very efficient, but just efficiency in general in Japan.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting topic, isn't it?
The general sense of efficiency is that actually Japanese offices, which you would maybe think are these kind of real hubs of industry, like people just working away. No, not the case at all.
Depends on the office or the company.
But that's what I was going to say. It's very much like any other country, again, like the everyone's well-behaved topic is. Actually, Japanese people slack off all the time, as anyone else would do. Again, Japanese people are not drastically different people, but their cultural norms are often very different from our cultural norms. And one of the ways it expresses itself is not necessarily in hard work, but they will stay in the office for so long.
So very, very long.
Actually, what that means is because of the hours they put in, they're actually less efficient than a lazy so-and-so in the UK is a lazy so-and-so, and a lazy so-and-so in Japan is a lazy so-and-so. But the thing is, the lazy so-and-so in Japan will still be in the office for 13 hours. Yeah. So actually he's less efficient because, the sort of hour to work ratio is much worse.
Yeah, and it all comes down to the definition of what good or hard work is, or a hard worker is, doesn't it? And in Japan, the definition of a hard worker is very much different to what we would be used to in a typical, again, I use that phrase, Western culture, but you know what I mean. A good worker here is someone who will dedicate their time, basically time, not necessarily energy, time.
They have to be in the office.
Yeah, to the office, to the company. So it's not unusual, especially in Tokyo. Smaller cities, maybe not quite so much. At least 10 hours a day, at least. So if you are coming to Japan for work, be prepared for that. If you're someone who very much values efficiency overall, maybe working in a Japanese company is not for you.
Well, managing a Japanese team might not be for you. Because the other thing is and this is true, and it's part of it's an important part of their culture. You have to understand if you're going to work with Japanese people or do business with Japanese people. They like to discuss every point. And reach an accord before they move forward.
Yeah, a consensus with all the employees, all the management, which is great in a way, because it means everybody gets
it's just valuing different things. For them, getting the project, because the thing is, like, when everyone's on board, like for example engineering projects for like the trains and stuff, then that's why you get the image of them being super efficient, because they can get stuff like that done so quickly
because everyone's on board and they've had their piece to say about it.
But when you're doing something from scratch with a Japanese project, that's what you don't realize. When you see the end result, you're like, wow, they're almost robotic in their efficiency. Like, no, there would have been years of meetings to do something like that. You actually, and no joke, sounds like we're taking a mic, but you will have meetings to discuss what you're going to cover in the next meeting.
Yeah.
And that meeting then will be preparatory for the event happening.
Yeah, they do love a good meeting here.
They love a meeting, yeah. But it's because they so value everyone having heard all the points, being there, being involved in, not necessarily involved in the decision, because if you're a junior worker, your voice is not heard. But you have to have been told, and them know that you've been told, and you've been there for the meetings.
Yeah.
Then it's fine. So that for us is pretty different.
So it just takes time.
Yeah.
Talking to everybody is going to take time. So be prepared to spend a lot of time waiting for an answer if you are doing business with a Japanese company or managing a Japanese team. So the efficiency, how it relates to our previous point, about the efficiency of trains, because you said there are millions and millions of people in a city like Tokyo, and you'll be in very close proximity to them every day.
Very close proximity.
And if you're taking the train, like most people do in Tokyo to get to work, you're going to be in extreme proximity to some Tokyoites.
Some ramen breath.
Oh, yeah.
But so the trains are often very efficient.
80% of the time, they work every time.
The Shinkansen is awesome, but it's because the Shinkansen is not a commuter train.
No, I think, well, I won't say it's not necessarily a misconception, but where this preconception comes out, all the trains are super efficient. They run to the dot every single day, and if it's late by 30 seconds, you get apologies. That's the Shinkansen. That's the bullet train.
Yeah.
That's how it operates.
Yeah, because the Shinkansen is not 30 seconds late. It's amazing.
And it's not a commuter train.
Yeah. So commuter
it's a
trains,
long distance intercity.
Commuter trains have to take the strain of what is
millions,
like 30 million people in the greater Tokyo area.
Yeah.
The commuter trains are in the peak hours are much less predictable. 5 minutes late, it can be common because you just think so millions of people coming into the centers, Shinjuku, Shibuya, Nihonbashi, all these kind of areas, right?
Tokyo Station itself.
One of them gets stuck in a door. One of them drops something onto the track. Because there are millions of people. That stops. And then the knock-on effect is mind-boggling. Because when it works amazingly, right? Because it does work. Some mornings it works amazingly, which is that probably something close to 1,000 people, I don't know, something close to 500 people are on this train. It pulls in at 6:59. They run across the platform to squeeze into a train that already had 300 people in it. Then another 500 people get onto that train, and it leaves on time at 7, and they all get to Shibuya. That does happen. But the single thing that can throw that off, then that one's late, and before you know it, you get into the station, and you're like, oh, they're all over the place.
And that happens, daily.
Yeah.
Really? Because you're operating a system that's completely overloaded, and it usually it runs like you just said a lot of the time, but it's really just on tenterhooks, isn't it? It's hanging by a thread. All it takes is, one day my train was late, and it made all the other subsequent trains late in the whole city because the guy announced over the PA systems that there was a foreign object on the track. Turns out some old lady had dropped her umbrella onto the track.
That's it, yeah.
Something as innocuous as that makes that train late, which makes the next train late, which has a knock-on effect, not just that line, but any line that connects with other lines, it will affect them as well. Every day, trains are efficient most of the time, but it is, if you're taking the train between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., it's a bit unpredictable at times.
The other thing, I guess,
depending on the line you're taking.
The positive spin to put on it is it's amazing that it's even as efficient as it is.
Oh, God, yeah.
Considering what they're coping with.
Yeah. And again, I think commuting in Japan or traveling Japan would be something we could definitely look at.
Yeah.
Because it is a really important part. And it's certainly, if you're coming here as a tourist, you should be prepared, and you need to know when to not take a train, and when you can take a train, and which trains you should avoid, and which trains you can definitely get on, no problem. So on to our final preconception about Japan.
Number 5.
Eating fish all the time.
Hey!
Now, I'm someone who doesn't really like seafood that much, and you may be thinking, why on earth did you come to Japan? Well, this is also another good chance to
as long as you like karage, you're fine.
Yeah. This is also another chance to prove that Japan is much like anywhere else in the world, in that there are lots of things you can eat. It's no different to my home in New Zealand or the States. I mean, I've been to the States, I've been to much of Europe. It's no different to any of those places. That they have their national dishes, but you can pretty much eat anything else you want.
Think about it, especially in Tokyo, I think all of Japan, especially Tokyo though, is you're never far from an Italian restaurant.
That's true.
So many Italian restaurants, yeah.
Because it's cheap and easy to make, isn't it?
Yeah. You're never far from a Chinese restaurant, but again, if you're coming for a vacation, or you're coming to live here in the first few weeks, you're worrying about what you have to eat. If you're in Tokyo, you'll be able to get quote unquote Western food pretty easily.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more expensive than you used to, but not cripplingly so. Depends. I mean, because if you want to eat steak every day, yeah, I mean that's crazy. That's expensive. But yeah, the whole sushi thing and like, oh, Japanese people eat sushi all the time, right?
Well, sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you could maybe compare sushi to something like a nice juicy ribeye steak.
Yeah.
We may eat that on occasion as a treat, and sushi's kind of like that here. It's definitely not an everyday food because it's quite expensive.
That's like, you just say that. Oh, it is quite expensive actually.
Yeah.
It adds up even if you go to a kaiten, which is the ones that go
spin
around the
around.
conveyor belt,
Yeah.
or even if you just go to one that's like a standing sushi bar. By the time you've actually had your fill, you might have spent about $20. No, what's Nissan in?
About $20 US.
About $20 US.
Yeah.
And that's not like you've had a meal. That's literally you've just had
a few nibbles,
a few plates of sushi and no drink.
Yeah.
You've spent $20. So if you're going like 3 of you and you're going to have like, okay, we're going to try lots of different kinds of sushi and we're going to have a couple of drinks, easily $50 plus each.
Yeah.
And that's for a standing one. That's like for a lower grade sushi place.
A lower grade place,
If you actually go to a sushi restaurant, like one of any
Proper
note,
one, yeah.
oh god, no, that's really expensive. Like hundreds of dollars each,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And you have to pretty much order a course, from what I understand, and sometimes they can be quite strict about...
Oh yeah, they will not change the course for you at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm allergic to da-da-da, well, don't order that.
Yeah.
Or
don't come here.
they respect in Japan. I mean, one thing that sounds a bit strange. Like, how does it fit in with Japan? How does it fit in with Japan's sort of culture of service? But it does, because when you go to a restaurant of that kind of class or note, Japanese people respect what they call like ganko, like stubborn. They respect like a chef who's a kind of artist and is stubborn and won't compromise. So for them, actually, they believe that they're providing the best service by not compromising.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how it seems quite strange to you. Like,
that.
but they're so customer focused. Why are they refusing to do this?
Yeah.
Actually, this is one of those things where two seemingly paradoxical things are meeting, but there's no paradox to a Japanese person, because they're thinking the best possible service we can provide is the way that we've designed this, and we would be disrespecting you by changing it. But we're thinking, well, just change it for me, and then if you respect. But it's like, no, the way they see it is like, I can't do that.
We wouldn't be able to guarantee a good job of it if we had to change it. We're good at doing this. We don't know what's going to happen if we do this.
So it's really interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole sushi, I mean, you know, I'm not a big...
You don't like fish, so sushi's a terrible idea for you.
Yeah, I dislike probably 90% of seafood. There's a few things that I find okay every now and then. And yeah, I've had people, both Japanese and non-Japanese, and they're like, well, how do you live in Japan then? Well, because from the Japanese side, I guess it's coming from a side of, and you will notice this not just in Japan, but in East Asian culture in general, China, Korea, Japanese culture, they'll have some similar base in that they can be quite proud of their national cuisine.
Yeah.
So like I've said, I don't like seafood very much, and some people, usually older people here, kind of almost not quite offended, but like been sort of taken that sort of personally. So what do you mean? What do you mean? Sashimi is delicious. It's the best sashimi in all of Tokyo. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't like it. Yeah. I've never liked this particular. I've just, and I probably never will like it. So be prepared for a little bit of that attitude. Down the line, we'll definitely delve into the topic of food, because it's a big deal here, obviously, and a lot of people are interested in Japanese food.
And on the flip side, I absolutely love sushi.
Yeah, so
I can't get enough of it.
So
like,
James could maybe tell you a thing or two about sushi. But
like, if you're coming here, you need to try like some of the things that are not so obvious but delicious, like akagai, hokigai, all the guys, which is like the shellfish.
all the guys. Great guys. You said I love sushi, right? Now, I've encountered many people back home who said, I love Japanese food, I want to go to Japan. And I've met those types of people who have come here, whether it's through friends of family or friends of friends have come here, and they said, yeah, great, let's go eat Japanese food. And they were quite shocked when they were encountered with...
yeah, because, I mean, sushi's just...
it's one of many.
Yeah, so many. I mean,
Japanese
because a lot of Japanese
cuisine.
food, actually, a lot of Japanese daily food is little things that you would call like osozai. So things like kimpira and... Like, so... Gobo. What's gobo? Burdock?
Burdock root.
Yeah, they eat a lot of burdock. They eat a lot of lotus root as well. They eat a lot of that in terms of daily food. And things like that. Yeah, I think they're different, so people aren't used to eating it. So, and what's the little black plants? You'll often get it sometimes you put it on your rice. I keep saying himeji, but himeji's a city.
It's a strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I really like it, but again, it's like a little black...
It's not for everyone.
It's a little black vegetable. usually served with beans and served cold. As you're listening to this, I'm sure your mouth is not watering because I like it, but I can see why a lot of people, like my parents when they were here, were just like, every time it came in a side dish, they were just like, move it away.
Yeah.
It's good for me. I ate it all, so.
Be prepared for not what you expected when you come here, food-wise, that is.
Yeah.
Certainly if you're even a slightly squeamish eater, not even like a squeamish eater, but just slightly, you may be quite surprised of what typical daily Japanese food actually is. You know, and certainly if you go to things like places like an izakaya, which is like a kind of like a bar where they serve everything to you, you're given a small side dish as part of the seating fee, and that will often be some kind of traditional Japanese little snack or entree, which is often it's things like like fish intestine or some form of innard.
But you're right, like unless if you are a bit of a kind of adventurous foodie person,
you'll be fine.
Oh man, like Japan's brilliant because you'll eat some stuff that you have never eaten before. But if you can be on the squeamish side, then stick to places that you know or stick to places that are in the guidebook, because you'll get a side dish which is like raw octopus, some internal organs of a fish. It can happen.
In summary, there's a lot of seafood here, but Japanese people on it, compared to your average Western diet, they would eat a lot more seafood daily. But if you don't like seafood, you'll be fine. Especially in a place like Tokyo.
I think in Tokyo, as long as you like fried chicken, you'll be fine. you can get fried chicken.
Japan
everywhere.
makes some of the best fried chicken.
Karaage.
Anywhere,
And it's really good. It can be really good.
But even the bad stuff is not that bad.
Yeah, and they love karaage. Fried chicken is massive.
It's really popular here. That's 5 common preconceptions that many non-Japanese people have about Japan, either before they come here or they're thinking about coming here, or even if they just like have a basic interest in Japan. We hope that some of the things we've said about those 5 preconceptions has maybe changed your thoughts on them or given you some more ideas about them. And as we said before, we'll be delving a lot deeper into similar topics, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff, like actually getting out and about into Tokyo.
And going out and about in Tokyo, like that's one of the things we're going to do is go to different areas of Tokyo. Tokyo's, every major station is just like a little city of its own. It's a really interesting place. You just find like little 700-year-old temples in between 2 massive skyscrapers. Stuff like that is true. Like that's not just an image. That's Tokyo. Very much to make this show work. We're going to drive it, and we can make it work on our own steam. But it'll get even better if you reach out and tell us some things that you'd be interested in us doing or talking about.
So one of the ways you can do that, well, at this early stage, probably the only way you can do that is getting in touch with us, is through our Twitter. So our Twitter handle is @TokyoExplore. So if you've got some ideas, any sort of topics you want to hear more about Japan or particular places in Tokyo, who knows, maybe down the line, maybe we could branch out of Tokyo if it's not too far.
Yeah, I mean, I love Kyoto.
Yeah.
I mean, but other parts as well, like Yokohama's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So
very easy to get to.
If you've got any suggestions, any ideas, any
Go
thoughts,
see the monkeys in Nikko.
Yeah, let us know @TokyoExplore on Twitter. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us for our next episode of Let's Explore Tokyo. You can find us on SoundCloud initially, iTunes, and very soon we'll be on all of the other major podcast platforms, Stitcher, Google Play, etc.
And I guess the easiest way might be that however you found us now, find us there again.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Sayonara.